Hello, Tom Simmons coming to you again with another aspect of our business class here, and today's discussion is going to be on the topic of social responsibility. Now, social responsibility is a subject that can fill entire courses, so I'm only going to be giving you a basic idea of some of the different ways that businesses and business entities have used in order to incorporate social responsibility into their business model. There are many definitions of what social responsibility even means. One, and this is not the magic one, but it works for our purposes, is that social responsibility is the obligation of an entity or a business to act for the benefit of society at large. And as we look through the history of how companies have approached this concept of social responsibility, we can also see that it's evolved. It's morphed through the years. And I'm actually going to spend the largest part of this lecture on the two most popular and most recent approaches, and that is the nonprofit organization and the social business enterprise. But I think it's important for us to establish a little bit of a history just to show the many different ways in which you, as a person in business, as a person starting a business, can exercise that desire, if you have one, to benefit the society at large while you're operating your business. One of the oldest concepts of social responsibility may actually seem a little strange to you at first. And that is, very often business people would say, hey, look, if I am offering a good product at a price that people can afford, that they want and that improves their lives, that is social responsibility in and of itself. And it certainly would be easy for a lot of technology companies, internet companies, computer companies, to make that argument if they chose, because the advent of the internet and of computers and of laptops and of cell phones and all the gadgets that we take for granted today has made it possible for people to conduct business without having to pay a lot of money for storefronts. They've made it possible for education to reach places it never reached before, and they could argue that simply offering this product at a price that the public is able to afford is in effect socially responsible because it's improved the lives of so many people. That's one possible argument. In today's environment, most people, especially among the millennial generation, are looking for something more concrete than that. Very often people are looking for a company, and they understand a company has to make a profit to survive and to employ people. But they're also looking for the company to go a step beyond their mere business operations in providing something back to the community. So, just as a way of refreshing everyone's memories, if you've seen my previous videos on business organization, let's just revisit really quickly what it means to be a corporation as opposed to a partnership or a sole proprietorship. When you become a corporation, you become a separate legal entity. You exist, the corporation exists separate from its owners. And that's important for a couple of reasons. First, if the owner of the company should pass away, the company still exists because the corporation is independent of the owner or owners. But it also means, as an independent entity, that it must pay taxes on the profit that it makes. So if you're the CEO of a company or you're the owner or one of the owners of a corporation, your corporation will pay taxes on the profit that they make, and then you will also pay personal income taxes on whatever it is that you're paid. So the flip side, the protection you get, is that if someone sues the corporation for something the corporation has done, they cannot come after you personally. That's called limited liability. And these are all concepts I've covered before in my initial business organization video. But now let's go a little deeper into corporations, because there's at least two different types of corporations. One is called a public corporation, and one is called a closed corporation. In a public corporation, the company sells ownership to the public, and they do that by selling stock. So if you buy stock in the company, you are an owner of that company. Now, what that means is that ownership changes every time stocks trade hands. It also means that your financial statements must be made public. They must be filed with the Security and Exchange Commission. And that means anyone, including your competitors, have the right to look at your financials. How much revenue did you take in? What were your expenses? What were those expenses for? What kind of a profit did you make? Is it likely you're going to be able to expand or not? This is all public information. So one of the strengths of going public is you sell your stock and you get income, you get revenue to build your company, but you lose ownership of it, and all of your financials are out there for everyone to see. The other kind of a company is a close corporation, which means you choose not to sell stock, not to sell ownership on the open market. Maybe it's you and your spouse, or you and 3 or 4 other people who own the company, and you're not planning on selling stock. You just organized as a corporation to protect yourself from liability. Or perhaps it might even be easier to get a loan from a bank if they see that you're a corporation. One of the upsides of that is that because you're not selling your stock to the public, you have no requirement to make your financials available to the public, so that you can operate your business without your competitors or anyone else knowing what it is that you're actually doing. So for many years, this was a standard way to organize a company as a corporation. And you could be a public corporation or you could be a close corporation. So looking at social responsibility within the context of a corporation, whether you're public or close, keep one thing in mind. Your purpose for being in business is to make a profit. That's your raison d'être. That's your reason for being. You're looking to make a profit, to pay people, to expand, to increase market share, and to survive and grow as a company selling the product or service that you are producing. In the context of that operation, though, you can engage, and many companies do, in socially responsible activities. So, if we look at some public corporations, sometimes their approach to social responsibility is to focus very narrowly on the specific product or the specific industry in which they're situated. For instance, Smith & Wesson is a firearms manufacturer located in Springfield, Massachusetts. And if you go to their website, they talk about their social responsibility. Well, their social responsibility is very closely tied to the industry they're in, the firearms industry. And they will tell you on the website that their contribution to the welfare of all is that they were the first firearms company to require all dealers selling Smith & Wesson products to sell them with trigger locks. And they have agreements with all of the shops who sell their products that they will undertake certain safeguards to make sure that firearms do not fall into the wrong hands. So that's a very narrow approach where social responsibility is tied very directly to what the company is doing. Another company that did something similar to that is Victoria's Secret, who is owned by a company used to be called The Limited, and now it's called, and I can't remember, it's L Brands or something like that, I believe. They received criticism because of the use of the models that they use in their advertising, that it created body shame issues for many young women who were not that thin, and that they were objectifying women in the underwear ads. And so Victoria's Secret's approach to social responsibility is very specifically to challenge that criticism. And over the years, they have given thousands of dollars to fight anorexia and to provide scholarships for women in business and other endeavors. And this is their effort to show that whereas some would criticize their impact on the society, they are taking their profit and using it to try and counter some of that negative effect, or some of that perceived negative effect of their operations. Now, expanding that a little bit, there are companies that get involved in a much wider range of social responsibility activities. For instance, HarleyDavidson. HarleyDavidson, as most of you know, is a motorcycle manufacturer out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And their business is the manufacture and financing of motorcycles. In terms of being involved in social responsibility, Harley-Davidson is involved in a wide range of activities in any community in which they have a dealership. And they have a separate foundation that provides grants and spending, and they emphasize education, the environment, and healthcare. As well as they have a significant portion of their social responsibility spending is on behalf of disabled veterans. Now some would say that they're actually spending it on behalf of people they see as a possible customer, but the spending doesn't have to happen at all. And this is how they have chosen to approach social responsibility. Now, moving a little broader. In one of my previous videos, I featured a company called Squeaky Wheel Media. Squeaky Wheel is a marketing firm in New York City. They actually were voted one of the most socially responsible medium-sized companies in New York City by Advertising Age. Their business purpose is to provide marketing and internet social media services for clients who need their products marketed. Their social responsibility approach, however, really is only tangential to social media. One of the co-presidents of Squeaky Wheel Media, Malet Lopez, is a breast cancer survivor. And what they decided to do was, out of 23 to 25 employees, 3 of them are devoted to operating a website called IHadCancer.com. This is a free website. It's a social networking website that the company supports for anyone with cancer, diagnosed with cancer, who is a survivor of cancer, who has a loved one who is being affected by cancer, to go on and socially connect with other people in the same geographic region as they are, or with the same type of cancer that they had, so they can talk through what they're experiencing and what to expect, and how to get through this medical crisis. They use a social media platform. It's a website because that's what they know and they do it well. But they're a marketing firm. And so this really doesn't, this approach to social responsibility doesn't specifically reflect back on marketing or the services they provide, but they leverage the strength they have to do something for others. And that's just another way to approach social responsibility. Nanette Lepore, another company I've looked at in my courses, is a close corporation. You can't find their financials anywhere. She is one of the preeminent fashion designers in New York City, using 100% American-made clothing. And so her approach has been to work within the industry to finance and help the Save the Garment Center movement, which is an effort to keep American jobs and keep the garment center in New York vibrant and working. That's been her approach. So, as a general rule, corporations have a lot of choices available to them. They can work to counter a perceived poor impact on society. They can work within their industry. They can go completely outside of their industry to help people that may not have a direct connection with their product or their company. And for a long time, these were the main ways that companies engaged in social responsibility. So, now let's turn to another form of corporation that we haven't talked about yet in any of my business videos, and that is the non-profit corporation. And some people may say, well, this is a business course. Non-profits are in business, so where's the connection here? Well, the connection here is that every single non-profit you ever run into needs the same business skills and acumen that a regular for-profit business needs. If you're a non-profit organization, you are hiring people. You are paying people. You are paying taxes to the government on people. You are managing people. You are marketing your product or service. You are engaged in business writing. You are engaged in making strategic alliances with other institutions. Every single thing that applies to a regular business applies to a non-profit organization. So if you're taking a business course, that doesn't mean you have to go into a for-profit business. Non-profits need managers and administrators and CEOs just like any for-profit business does. So, what makes a non-profit different? Well, in a non-profit corporation, you start a corporation just like you would a for-profit corporation in your home state. But the difference is a non-profit is not allowed to make a profit. Instead, what their financial statements say at the end of the year is that they have a change in assets. The profit or any extra assets is not allowed to go to shareholders. It must be used within the confines of the corporation for the activities for which they're organized. They also must file with the IRS. A lot of people don't realize this. They don't file a tax return because they're not paying federal income tax as a nonprofit. But they are filing something called a 990, a 990, which is a statement of all their revenues and all their expenses and the change in assets at the end of the year. And this is available to the public. So just like a public for-profit corporation, you have access to the financial data of a nonprofit corporation, which some nonprofits are not happy about, but that's the way the law reads. They are largely dependent on grants and contributions, and that means the position of grant writer or fundraiser becomes a very important position within a nonprofit organization. It means that the income is often not steady. Grants dry up, grant money dries up. A company that's contributed to you 4 or 5 years in a row may have a bad year and say, I'm sorry, I can't give this year. And so there's a constant chasing for income, for revenue, to make sure that that service can be delivered. And keep in mind what I said, that a nonprofit can be just as big and unwieldy and complicated to run as a business. The YMCA is a nonprofit. They take in billions of dollars in revenue a year. If they were considered a for-profit company, they would be one of the 20 largest companies in the United States. So, yes, you need business skills to operate that type of a corporation. The Humane Society is a nonprofit corporation, and certainly they need to fundraise and operate and manage, and they've done an incredible job creating a brand image. When I say the Humane Society, I'll bet everyone watching this video knows exactly who they are and what they do, and probably have a gut reaction about that organization. In order to be a nonprofit, you must be in business, you must be organized for certain specific purposes that the Internal Revenue Service considers nonprofit. And those specific categories, and this is contained in IRS Regulation 501c3, are the following. You must be organized as a charitable organization, a religious organization, an educational organization, a scientific organization, for literary purposes, for the purposes of testing for public safety, for putting on amateur sports competitions, or prevention of cruelty to children or animals. That's 501c3. Now, there are other sectors of the nonprofit code that permit other organizations to be considered nonprofit as well, such as credit unions and sports leagues. But I'm not going to go into those in this particular lesson. Let's just focus on the 501c3. So you have a heart for education, for scientific research, for doing charity, for testing for public safety, for sports for amateur sports. You can organize your organization as a non-profit. You will file a 990 with the IRS. The world gets to see your income and your outgo. And you have to have a board of directors, and you have to have annual meetings where the directors elect each other back to their positions. And of course, you can't make a profit. And most nonprofits will tell you they struggle just making ends meet. So, that's your nonprofit. And if you just have a heart for doing good in the world and it falls into one of those categories, that might be the direction you go. Now, there's some mixed models where we take the models that I've just talked about and we kind of take a little bit of each and create a new thing. One of these is called the hybrid nonprofit. In a hybrid nonprofit, they are legally nonprofits, but in a hybrid nonprofit, you organize as a nonprofit for a nonprofit purpose, but instead of having to rely on contributions and grants and people giving you money to help you operate, you start a business to fund your operation. One of the best examples that I can think of a hybrid nonprofit is an institution in New York City. I know I talk a lot about New York, but that's where I'm from, called Housing Works. Housing Works exists to provide housing and healthcare services to homeless LGBT kids. A very large number of homeless on the streets, especially in New York, are LGBT teenagers who've been thrown out of their houses. They provide housing and try to get them back on track with education and the health care they might need. It would be hard to do that, to fund housing and all these services, if they were just doing bake sales, if they were just trying to find contributions to come in. So what they've done is they've opened up a series of businesses. They've opened cafes, bookstores, t-shirt printing shops, furniture resale shops. In other words, they've gone into business. They actually operate businesses. The total profit from those businesses goes to the nonprofit. So look at the beauty of that. The business is giving all of its profit to the nonprofit. Therefore, the business no longer has a profit and they don't pay taxes on it. I'll say that again. The business that they run makes a profit, but they take all that profit and donate it to the nonprofit. Now the business, which may have had $10,000 in profit, has a zero profit because they gave it away. With a zero profit, the business doesn't have to pay taxes. The money goes to the nonprofit, and then they can use that to operate the nonprofit purposes for which they're organized, rather than having to rely on someone giving them a grant. That's a hybrid nonprofit. Another approach to this would be, and this is probably the most recent incarnation, is the social business venture. And this has a number of different names, a number of different definitions. So I'm just going to give you the generic approach here. A social business venture is organized as a for-profit corporation. So we're kind of come full circle now. We've gone from corporations who may do something good for society to a non-profit that's organized to do good for the society, and now we're coming back to the profit, the for-profit. It's a for-profit organization whose purpose is a non-profit purpose. So, for instance, one of the first ones, and probably the best example I can give you, is Grameen Bank out of Bangladesh. Muhammad Yunus, who founded the bank, was frustrated and concerned because of poverty that just never seemed to end in Bangladesh and India. And if you know anything about the bank loan system in that part of the world, it would not be unusual for banks. First of all, they wouldn't loan to you if you had no credit or poor credit. So if you were poor, you couldn't get a loan in order to build a business. If you did get a loan, it may be 20 or 30% interest, which would kill you. So what Muhammad Yunus did with Grameen Bank is he began giving what's called microloans, small by U.S. standards, $200, $300, to groups, very often groups of women in a village who had no credit and absolutely no chance of repaying whatsoever. But he gave them the loan with the understanding that they would use it to try and start a business. And very often these groups of women would buy a sewing machine, and they would begin making clothing from rags that had been thrown away or discarded. The repayment rate on these loans has exceeded 97%. And what it has done is it has empowered an entire generation of people who were otherwise in poverty who couldn't get loans. So banking is a for-profit purpose, right? And Grameen Bank was organized as a bank. But their reason for being is to provide a non-profit service. They really are trying to doing a charitable work in lifting people out of poverty. Another example of that would be Tom's Shoes. And there are some people who find Tom's Shoes controversial. I don't. Tom's Shoes is a for-profit corporation, but their purpose, their reason for being, is to provide clothing and shoes in particular to underprivileged children in developing countries. And so the business model is such that every single time someone buys a pair of shoes from Tom's Shoes, they donate one pair of shoes to one of these developing communities where children have nothing on their feet. And the way they do it is they charge you a little more than they might normally. So when you buy a pair of shoes, you're actually buying two pairs of shoes. You're buying the pair that you're wearing, and you're covering the cost of sending another pair of shoes somewhere else in the world. It's a for-profit company. It's a closed company, closed corporation, which means they don't have to share their financials with the rest of the world. They don't have to, register with the Securities and Exchange Commission and go through all of the public scrutiny that a big corporation like Harley-Davidson would have to. They can operate the way they want to within their company, but their purpose is to provide good in the world. Last example of a social business enterprise is a hotel and restaurant, upscale, high quality, and my Italian is not very good, but it's called Albergo Etico, ethical house. And this is a large hotel restaurant complex. Their reason, the sun is coming in, their reason for being is to provide training, housing, and jobs training to people with Down syndrome. And everyone who works in the restaurant and the hotel whether it's as a chef, whether it's a wait staff, whether you're in administration. All of these employees have some intellectual disability. Most have Down syndrome. They are all employed. They are all living there. They're all learning there. They're becoming independent by going through this process. That's the purpose for this organization. But they're organized as a corporation. And they sell a product. They're a restaurant. They're a hotel. They're providing accommodations. They're providing meals. And so it's a business that runs as a business, but the purpose of the business is to do something much better for society. So you've got all these models now. You can just be a corporation and you provide a product or a service, and on the side you perform some socially responsible activities. And it might be related to your business. It might be such as Smith & Wesson. It might be related to your industry, such as Nanette Lepore, or it might not be related to your industry directly at all, like Harley-Davidson. Or you can say, I want to be in a nonprofit and just have good business sense, and then you organize like the YMCA or the Humane Society. Or you say, I want to be a nonprofit, but I don't want to rely on contributions. I want to have a business that supports it. And then you become a hybrid nonprofit. Or you say, I don't want to deal with my financials being public. I don't want to be a nonprofit. I want to be a business whose purpose is to be socially responsible or provide a socially responsible outcome. So, excuse me, you've got all these choices. They've been evolving through the years. And most companies will tell you that they're involved somehow in some aspect of social responsibility. The form it takes, very different. The degree to which their company focuses on it, very different. You're going into business. You're choosing a business to work for. You're choosing a career ahead of you. That's something that you might want to consider as a factor in where do I want to devote my time? Where do I want to make a difference? Is that important to me? And if it is, what's the model that's going to work for me? Okay, Tom Simmons signing off.